Hi there, I'm Charley Mann with law firm Alchemy, and I'm excited to share with you the Hiring Manifesto. This is going to be a tool that will help you hire in your law firm, will help you attract the right candidates, even help you figure out the candidates who would be best for your practice. This is all based around some job trends that started popping up during COVID when it became much more difficult for law firm owners to find talent that they wanted. I put this together in response to a tightened job market for employers. You see, before COVID, economic circumstances made it relatively easy, if we're being honest, for you to go out and find exactly the talent that you want for your practice. But what do we do when it shifts back and there's an abundance of jobs and you as an employer have to be more competitive out there? How can you attract the best people to your practice? How can you make sure that you are in the top tier of talent acquisition? Because as you know, in a law firm, people are the product. That's what happens in a service business, is your people are the product. So you want to figure out how to find and attract the very best people for your practice. This is a very practical video. We're going to go step by step, and I encourage you to take notes throughout as we discuss the Hiring Manifesto. So let's go ahead and get started. Solutions to the talent acquisition problem. So we're going to go straight into the system. This is the order of operations for how you go about hiring people. This is a 9-step system I have used for a long time in hiring people in many law firms and assisting law firm owners just like you and lawyers who are responsible for hiring HR directors, etc., to find the right talent for the practice. So let's begin at the beginning. The first thing that you have is you have to determine your position of need. And obviously, there's a big difference between what you need and what you want. There's an important question, and it is often best framed up in Gino Wickman's system, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS, which is what are the needs of the business? So what does your business really need? It's actually really important that you spend time in figuring out the actual need of your business as opposed to simply what you want or what you've been told you're supposed to have. And that's a real lesson right there. Are you just following what you've been told that you're supposed to have, or are you really confident it's what you need to succeed? It helps to sit down and start planning the structure of your firm for the next 3, 4, or even 10 hires, depending on the size that you are. In general, if you are 5 people or fewer, you want to know who your next 2 hires are. From 5 to 10 people, you want to know for your next 3 to 4. And if you have more than 10 people, knowing more than your next 4 hires is really beneficial. And once you hit the 30-person mark, you should have a sense of what your next 10 hires are. You can kind of tell that the rough rule here is the rule of thirds. I should know my hires a full third out from where I'm at. So if I have 12 people, for example, I should know the next 4 hires. So generally following the rule of thirds will help you grasp where you are heading with your practice. So first, determine your position of need. Next, map out the type of person who fits the position. For example, if you are hiring a paralegal, there's a big difference between, say, a front-end paralegal and a back-end paralegal. A front-end paralegal will be more focused on new client interactions, onboarding, etc., and their emotional intelligence may need to be higher than the person who is, say, requesting medical records. Now, we could get into a semantics debate about whether or not the person who's requesting medical records should really be a paralegal or a legal assistant, but that's not really the point of this. The idea is to simply understand that depending on what your paralegal is actually going to do will change the type of person you're going to hire. So if they're front end, maybe higher emotional intelligence. If they're back end, someone who's a little bit more systems oriented, a little bit more of a rules follower, who maybe likes data, who's comfortable with spreadsheets and has experience there. The idea, of course, being that you want to match the right type of person to the position. If you take someone who has high emotional intelligence, very extroverted, and stuff them into a back room, it doesn't matter how talented of a paralegal they may be or how good they will be at that job, their performance will overall suffer and you'll have a higher turnover rate in that position because you're not matching the right candidate to the position. Next, obviously we need to develop and edit the job ad. It seems really rote, but developing and editing your job ad is crucial to getting the right outcome. Because frankly, most job ads kind of suck, especially for law firms. There's a lot of copy and paste and just outlining of basic needs that goes on in hiring for law firms. And I want to break you of that habit. You should not be running the same old job ads, because then you're only ever going to get the same old candidates. So let's focus on developing and creating job ads that are more dynamic. And don't worry, we're going to talk about those. Then, and this is really important, you're going to run your job ad in multiple modalities. I'll show you what that means later on, but to give you a preview, the concept here is you shouldn't be running one job ad in one location. You should be running 3 job ads in 3 locations. I'm talking 3 by 3, which means that you've got 9 chances to succeed in hiring the right person. Then, of course, you're going to evaluate candidates. I have some really bad news for you here. There are very few people who will follow instructions and who will be great applicants for the position. In job ads where we have a higher level of instruction for people to follow, which is very common when we are hiring for upper level positions, you may find as little as 10% of applicants actually follow the instructions, especially if you do something as simple as requesting a cover letter where they answer a specific question. So basically they have to write a cover letter for your specific job. It shouldn't be this difficult, but it frankly is. It's just hard to get people to follow instructions. We can blame it on the current job market. We can blame it on millennials, on Gen Z, but the truth is that I see this issue across all age groups when involved in the hiring process. In evaluating candidates, it's really important that whatever type of litmus test we may set for candidates, that we observe and honor those litmus tests. If we ask for someone to send in a specific cover letter, let's not play games about that. They need to actually submit that cover letter following the instruction that you had, or else what's the point of engaging in this exercise? Next up, the screening interview. So once you've decided which candidates are following the instructions and are worth talking to, it's time to have a screening interview. The screening interview is where I always make sure that I ask litmus test questions. For some time when hiring, the law firm that I worked at, Ben Glass Law, there was not a benefits package available. So we had to tell candidates, would you be comfortable accepting a position where there is not a health insurance or 401k currently available? Because if that's a primary for them in the job they're going to take, well, they're not going to take this job, and that's just going to get in the way of the process. None of us are going to end up being happy with that situation. So better to ask that litmus test question up front. Same thing goes for technology questions as well. You want to get those out of the way. If they have to have experience with previous CRM or using Outlook or working with digital calendars, it could be that simple, then you need to make sure you ask that question, because if you don't, we are going to end up in a world of hurt when we have a person coming in for an interview or potentially even being hired for a job who cannot live up to our standards. Next up, our fit for business interview. I usually like to have my screening interviews over the phone. I keep them to 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how many candidates I need to go through and how important it is for me to whittle it down before the fit for the business interview. So in that screening interview, it may be very simple questions outlining the job itself, so that way they can confirm and I can confirm that this is a role that they actually want, not a role they kind of randomly applied for. Because yes, sometimes it happens. They may be good at applying for a lot of jobs, but once they actually hear what the job is about, it's not their favorite opportunity. So next up, we have our fit for business interview. This is in person. I like to have this comfortable hour, in some cases even longer. Again, depending on how many candidates we have to go through and how important this position is at the firm. I'm not saying that any position is distinctly more important than the others, but let's be real, some are. In my background, which was actually in semi-professional theater for a while, there was always the saying, there's no small parts, only small actors. There's no small roles in your firm, but you can end up hiring small people, which is to say that they are not good fits. They are not worthy of being part of your culture and your business operation, which is hopefully growing and providing more opportunity for folks. So, fit for business interview. Will this person actually fit the role? Will they provide what we need? Are they a good fit for what we are trying to accomplish? Do they seem to jive with the vision of the practice overall? And so on. Next up, after they've gone through the fit for the business interview, we're going to have the skills and integration interview. So in the skills and integration interview, this is where we're going to focus on what's on the resume. What is their past experience? How well would they handle the job responsibilities? We're going to do a lot of scenario-based interviewing here. If you were faced with X situation, how would you respond? I remember when hiring an administrative assistant who was also going to operate in some executive assistant capacity, asking her, imagine that I've gone to an airport, and we have a lot of airports up in the DC area where I'm located. So what if I went to the wrong airport? I went to Reagan instead of Dulles, and it looked like I was going to end up being late for my flight. And I tell you, that's the problem. What would you do to try and make it right? And so she ended up doing a processing exercise, talked about trying to call the airline, seeing if they could get me rebooked. Would there be a later flight at either one of the airports? Can she get me a car to take me over to the other airport if that was appropriate? So that type of scenario-based interviewing helps you understand how someone is actually going to think, how they will respond to a real-life scenario. And that's kind of important, isn't it? So that's our skills and integration interview. Well, here's the integration side. How well do they fit with the team? I should mention that in both the fit for business interview and the skills and integration interview, I want more than just myself in there. You should want more than you in there. You need multiple team members in there to ask questions, and also for you to find out how well will this person integrate with the existing culture. It's great to have team members in there that you trust as high culture fits in your law firm. Otherwise, you're not going to get the full picture. Instead, you're going to get someone who may have some bias or another, or who is a little overprotective of their space in your office, and so may not give you the real feedback that you should be getting because they don't necessarily want you to hire someone who they perceive as better than them. And you think that that wouldn't happen, but it happens all the time. So make sure you have good culture fits in on the integration interview. Then, at this point, we've probably spent 2 to 3 hours with the candidate, and we're going to look at making an offer or starting the process over. That second part of the statement, starting the process over, is vital for you to accept. If you are not willing to go through this process and start over, you could be making a $20,000, $50,000, or $100,000 mistake in your law firm that will set you back not just the money, but all the time that you invest in this individual. If you do not find a good fit, you need to be honest with your team and say, look, we're gonna have to reset the job search right now. We need to put these job ads back out there. We don't have a good enough fit who I think would be able to play at you all's level and be able to advance the firm forward. I'm going to ask all of us to kind of batten down the hatches and make it through to the other side on this. So that way we will ultimately come away with a fantastic fit for the firm that you all will love having as another team member here and who fits in our culture. So if we can't make a strong offer, we'll just have to start the process over. I remember hiring a receptionist at one point where I had to start the job ad process over twice. And rather than it taking 3 weeks to hire a receptionist, it took nearly 10 weeks. Fortunately, the team was willing to suffer through it. And we ended up with a team member who lasted, I believe it was 7 years at the firm and was extremely successful before moving on to a very senior level paralegal position at a much larger law firm that represented a huge career advancement for her. So this is the 9-step order of operations for the system. Now let's break down pieces of this system. First off, there's a big dynamic change going on overall in the market, which is the difference between imposing your will versus letting the market come to you. In the past, it used to be that you could use clarity of outcome to impose your will on the market. You could kind of go to the market and say, and by the way, this is still useful advice when the market becomes more employer-friendly rather than employee-friendly the way it is now. When it's more employer-friendly, when there are fewer jobs and more people who are unemployed, you can have a clarity of outcome. So you might say, I want a paralegal with this many years of experience in this type of practice area who has these attributes. You focus on exactly what you want. And even right now, as I'm recording this, where it is a little bit more employee-friendly, this type of thinking can still be useful for long-term construction of the firm. If you're trying to hire far ahead, especially say for an attorney in your practice, It may help to be very clear on the outcome that you want, exactly the team member that you want, and start conversations with people in the legal community as far as a year in advance of you expecting to hire someone. And yes, I said a year in advance, especially if you're trying to hire an attorney. One of my coaching clients was searching for a criminal defense attorney. It took him a full year to find the right fit for the practice, but that attorney has been a phenomenal fit and is now a culture leader within the firm. Then the next is, if we can't impose our will, like right now where it's a little more employee friendly, we're going to let the market come to us. So we're going to use clarity of process rather than clarity of outcome. We're going to try and figure out what is available. This is where you're going to see this 3x3 structure running 3 different types of job ads on 3 separate platforms at a time in order to better understand the market. If we can't look for that one specific employee because the odds are just not in our favor, let's go a little bit more broad. Let's try and attract as many candidates to ourselves as possible so that way we can see what's really available in the market and find the best in class option. And that's the phrase I want you to focus on here. Looking for the best in class option. Who is the best of the legal assistants or the best of the paralegals or the best of the case managers at different levels? Maybe it's a junior paralegal versus senior paralegal and you're not sure which pool of candidates will have the right talent for you at the right price. So we're going to be a little bit more expansive in our search, and by widening our search parameters, by basically looking for something like a legal assistant, paralegal, and case manager all at the same time, we could potentially find the best in one of those classes and then work to hire that person, knowing that we may still need the legal assistant in the future, but there's only great case managers on the market right now. So next up, we want to spend more time on our early decisions. So focusing on what are the major job categories that someone's going to be involved with. If they are going to be handling drafting, for example, good. We know that we need a strong writer. If we know that they're going to be handling new clients, okay, we have to figure out that emotional intelligence. It's good to group together the major categories that someone's going to work on because increasingly people are looking for a lot of upfront clarity in the job description. So I recommend you iron that out and make sure it is very clean for the person to understand what their major job categories are. Doesn't mean that you can't drop in there something like special projects or to focus on the idea that you are a smaller law firm and they have to be willing to step up and maybe wear many hats, but let's focus on the major job categories for them. Then the core processes that they're going to run. If someone is going to be answering the phone, what does our intake script actually look like? What is our expectation there? Are they going to have to do input into our CRM system or our case management system? What technology stack are they dealing with? How are they passing clients off? Are they going all the way through signing a client, or are they just an appointment setter? For an attorney, is it a pre-litigation attorney? And if so, what are the processes they're expected to hit and run within your firm? Understanding all these means that when someone is asking about what does my job look like day to day, or, and I recommend that you describe it this way, week to week, you can give them a really accurate portrayal. And then, of course, knowing the personality and the values. If someone has a bad values alignment with your firm, that is just not going to fly. It's going to be a bad fit. It's going to end up being a catastrophe. I promise you that much. So let's write a better job ad here. This is all copywriting. This is all marketing. Writing a better job ad is just 100% marketing. You have to get good at this if you want to attract the right candidates, and you really have to focus on writing job ads that don't look like all the other job ads. People who apply to all the other job ads are probably people who are looking for the absolute minimum level of work required in order to complete the application. Does that sound like a person who's as valuable to your team? No, probably not. Instead, you're looking for someone who is focusing on the job search, putting their best foot forward, and actually paying attention to the details. So you can even see on this page, you can see how some bulleted lists are used, how some bolding is used in order to create kind of a flow to the job ad. So the first thing in a job ad is, who are you looking for? This could be as simple as when you look on this job ad, you can see this job may be a particularly great opportunity for a recent college grad who has built their own website, podcast, YouTube channel, or other online creative outlet. No marketing degree needed. This was a job ad for a marketing assistant. A job seeker has done some online marketing for another business. In addition to another role, would like to officially transition to full-time marketing. Someone who doesn't have a degree but has tinkered with their own websites, coding, etc., and would like the chance to prove themselves in marketing because they would shine if given the right opportunity. This is saying to the right person, I understand you, I understand your journey, I understand that you're someone who's just looking for a shot, and that when you get it, you will be super successful. That you have a lot of self-belief here. So the categories here are, someone who's actually built the darn thing, someone who has actively worked in marketing. That's the idea, is we're looking for people who have actually built something in marketing rather than just has a marketing degree, because a marketing degree doesn't mean nearly as much as someone who has some practical experience. So that's who I'm looking for here. So next up, we're going to do ideal candidate categories. I'm looking for someone who can help our awesome coaching and training business launch new marketing campaigns. This includes digital advertising, social media, building landing pages, web content, and more. Then we have our ideal candidate categories that we just talked about. And then core job responsibilities. You're also going to see the phrase here, the perfect person for us doesn't need to have a specific college degree or years of experience. They should prefer people who have done their own form of tinkering and testing with marketing and now want to make that their career. Even describing our ideal marketing team member, we'll see many projects through from concept to finished product, or as they say, from idea to execution with the help of our existing team. Think about what I'm selling in that process. I'm saying you're going to get an opportunity to work start to finish on your marketing projects, and you're going to have a team there supporting you. It's kind of a best of both worlds scenario. Now we have our core job responsibilities: web page creation, social media management, database management, content creation. We're really, whistling out for the people who we think are going to be a great fit for this job, who are excited about those things, because if they're not excited about those, boy, oh boy, they're really going to not like this job overall. Next up, what makes this place great? The type of person who will succeed in this role, core member of our marketing team. You do have to sell someone on the actual opportunity to be employed with you, because as a small law firm, you may be offering a lower amount of money than they might get somewhere else. So what lifestyle benefits and what culture benefits do they gain from working in your firm? Be honest about these things. Don't bait and switch people. If you are a hard-driving, high-performance culture, be honest about that, because that may be really exciting for someone, and here's the way that you sell that. Our culture is one that focuses a lot on performance, and being a driven individual is very beneficial here because you'll be working with other driven individuals. The great news is that means career advancement usually happens faster here than at any other firm, meaning you could get years ahead of your peers in comparison and advance up either our ladder or find another opportunity at a firm with other senior positions. And yes, we are always excited to see people grow, whether here or outside the practice. Now, the idea is hopefully you're going to rope them in, have a career advancement ladder for them in your practice, but it is good if you are willing to let them also go and shine in other places. So what makes this place great? Selling them on the culture. Positive and negative traits. So I like to say, the type of person who would absolutely love working here is going to be a book reader. A forever learner type is someone who doesn't spend an inordinate amount of time on social media, who probably focuses on their mental and physical health. Things like that. What are the positive and negative traits that we're looking for? So don't forget the negatives. This would not be a good fit for you if you only read celebrity gossip, if you haven't learned a new piece of technology in the last 3 years. Those are all negative traits, examples of negative traits that you may want to include to tell people to, stay away, who should stay away. And then if you like statements, so if you like creating a ton of content with a super supportive team while working in an environment that encourages you to put your head down and work hard in the morning and then come up for air for meetings and strategy sessions in the afternoon, this would be an amazing fit for you. And then specific response instructions. I always like having some type of response instruction, usually asking for a cover letter, like I mentioned earlier on, that is with a simple question of, please respond with a cover letter that includes the answer to the question, what is the one thing in this job ad that excited you the most? That's my default question that I'm going to ask, and I want to see someone give me a specific response. I've gotten a lot of bad cover letters over the years, including cover letters that are not even for the position that I'm hiring for. I literally had someone send in a cover letter for a marketing assistant position where they said, I'm excited to apply for this laboratory assistant position. They also listed a chemical company at the top of the cover letter as the recipient. They definitely didn't get the job. So that's how you write a better job ad. Now let's talk about actually posting the job ad. So right now, Indeed.com is the current priority. I will say a little hack to all of this is use a service like WizeHire, WizeHire.com, that also does disc tests and helps you put the job ad in other places. ZipRecruiter is another resource that you can use. But if you had to prioritize just one, I would say Indeed.com. That is the most commonly used one. It's also the most commonly used by most of the types of people you're going to be searching for. Paralegals, administrative assistants, marketing assistants, and maybe even junior attorneys, associates. If you're searching for a senior attorney, you're mostly going to work through your network to find them, and you need to start having those conversations like 8 months ago if you want to hire that person anytime soon. So these job posting platforms are specifically for not the highest level positions in your firm, but are for the vast majority of positions and are great for being able to scale up your practice. So, I talked about the 3x3. I would be running job ads on multiple locations. LinkedIn and Indeed are two of those locations. And then I would encourage you to post the job ads on Facebook groups, especially local Facebook groups that might be moms who are re-entering the workforce, neighborhood groups, church groups, etc., that would allow you to share those job ads. You may need to contact the admin of those groups in order to post that job ad, but hopefully they are amenable to you sharing a money-making opportunity with their community. Then what you're going to do is not only have those ads on different platforms, you're going to test different job titles, you're going to test different sales copy. Yes, that's what your job ad is. It is sales copy, and you're going to change the pay range. So the example I used earlier was legal assistant, paralegal, case manager. Let's say you're willing to pay a legal assistant $32,000 to $35,000 per year. A paralegal, you pay $38,000 to $42,000, and a case manager gets paid $45,000 to $50,000, just as an example. You're going to put all those job ads out there on all of the platforms so that way you can get the largest pool of candidates possible for you to filter through, so that way you can choose the pick of the litter for your law firm. In general, your rule is going to be willing to take the best person, no matter how much they might cost. Now, I don't literally mean no matter how much they might cost. If you have a case manager coming to you and saying, I need to make $150,000, unless you are a 50-person plus law firm who needs a case manager who's going to actually manage all the other case managers, it's probably out of the question entirely. But let's say you're looking for the difference between a marketing assistant, a marketing coordinator, and a marketing director. And your hope was kind of to get the coordinator, somebody who's going to coordinate with a lot of vendors and sort of take your strategy and implement it. You might pay them $55,000 or so. And instead you have a marketing director walk in the door who says, look, I need to make at least $75,000 for this to work for me. But they have just this awesome checklist of experience. They are willing to do a level of practical implementation plus coordination plus actually help strategy set and get everything organized in your firm, and will allow for much more efficient use of your fiscal and chronological resources, so both your money and your time. That person figuring out how to pay them the extra $20,000 may be 100% worth it for your firm, and you should figure out how to make it work with that talent rather than think, oh, they cost too much. Hiring is always an investment. Now, if that person were to come in and say they need 90, and it just is absolutely unrealistic for you to hire someone at 90, put you so far behind it, put too much of a crunch on the rest of the firm, your smaller practice, 4 or 5 people, there are limits here. Let's not be unrealistic, but let's also not force ourselves to be overly realistic, because usually in trying to be hyper realistic, we end up losing out on big opportunities. So different job titles, different copy, and change your pay ranges depending on the job title across those multiple platforms in order to get as many people as possible roped in. Next up is our interview process, which we kind of already talked about in depth, so you may want to go back and review that. Screening interview, fit for business interview, and our skills and integration interview. It's important to understand that you have to avoid yes or no questions in these interviews, except for the screening interview where we're going to do those litmus test questions. Do you have experience with Microsoft Outlook? Have you ever used an online calendar before? Then when it comes to the fit for business, remember, scenario-based interview, open-ended questions, and I'm going to give you a cheat phrase that will allow you to unlock new and novel answers from your candidates. Tell me more about that. If a candidate says, I have experience working in Microsoft Excel, tell me more about that. Okay. Then your follow-up to tell me more about that, if they haven't done this already, is can you share an example of a time that you worked in Microsoft Excel and how that helped the company? These are great little ways between the scenario, the tell me more about that, and describe your past experience. You could interview someone for potentially 3 hours plus and find out a lot about them and figure out if they're going to be the perfect fit for your practice. Same thing goes for the skills and integration. And make sure I start every interview by saying, look, I'm going to ask you questions for a little bit, but I want you to know I'm interested in what questions you have for us, so I hope you've come prepared for that, and I will turn that over to you in the next 15 minutes, so that way we can make sure all of your questions are answered and then ensure that all of our questions are answered. I actually do think it is a priority to make sure that you answer the questions of the candidate, because you never want someone who is saying yes in a tepid fashion to your firm. We always want the enthusiastic yes to any type of job. Next up, we talk about never getting trapped. So this doesn't get talked about a lot, to say the least. Never getting trapped. You never want to be, and my friend Tim Semmelroth says this, he loves to talk about hiring from the you should never shop hungry. I would 100% agree with him. Don't get trapped making a desperate decision. First off, have a relationship with a staffing agency. They can be expensive, but when you need someone to patch in as a temp or potentially to help you with searching for the right team member, a good staffing agency can go a long way. I recommend that you have at least 2 staffing agencies that you would call if you needed temporary help in your firm. I've worked with these agencies before. Usually it's front-end positions like receptionist and intake that they're the best, but even basic legal assistant work can be patched over, or an executive assistant would be a good fit as well. Also have a contingency plan for everyone in your practice. No one is invincible in your practice. There's no such thing as I couldn't imagine what it's like to lose that team member. You can, and you very well may lose that team member. Better to get ahead of it and to decide what you would do if that were to happen. That can take a lot of pressure off of you as the firm owner, and pressure off of anyone who's handling hiring responsibilities if you knew exactly what you would do. How would I delegate the work that person has? Who would I contact to fill in that position? Would I use a temp agency? Would I move to a virtual assistant? Would I elevate an existing team member into that position and hire for that team member's vacated position? Know your team's actual capacity. Chances are your team operates most of the time at around 80% capacity, and that is more or less how it should be. It is very difficult for people to operate at 100% capacity 100% of the time. But they can operate at 100 or even 110, 120% capacity for a limited amount of time. So if you better understand your team's capacity, so let's say each attorney is able to handle 100 files in your practice at any given time, and you lose an attorney and you have 2 others and that attorney had 100, well, you're going to be looking at those other attorneys and you probably can't hand over 100 files between the 2 of them. That's an extra 50. But if their actual capacity would be about, say, 120 normally, okay, now we've got 40% of the problem solved. Would they be willing to take a little bit of extra pressure, each of them taking on 130 or 135 cases? And can you step in to at least manage the remainder cases until you hire the next attorney or paralegal case manager to take over those files for you? That's all about knowing your team's actual capacity. If you have the budget, get at least one hire ahead. If you're a growing law firm, you shouldn't hire just when you absolutely need to. You should be hiring slightly ahead of schedule. Again, if you are pressured for profit margin, if you simply do not have the resources to make this investment, I am totally understanding of it, but I don't want you pulling any punches and not hiring just to try and preserve an extra little bit of profit. Usually that's going to cost you heavily in the long run in exchange for a little bit of short-term money. Get one hire ahead. Always have job ads ready to launch. I would even modify this and say, always have job ads running. There's no reason, especially in a firm that has 8 or more people in it, to not have active job ads out there on the market. Listen to me very carefully for the following statement. Just because you have a job ad out there does not mean you are required to hire someone. You can use it as an opportunity to fish for an absolutely ideal team member for your practice rather than hiring to fill a current need. Instead, you've got the paralegal position out there because basically you've done your math and you know that if a superstar paralegal comes along, you will absolutely figure out how to hire him or her. And that's why we keep that job ad available all the time. Now, for something like a senior attorney where you may have a limited number of those positions, have the job ad to replace that person always ready to go, even if you're just willing to copy and paste the job ad that you used to hire them previously. Simple little hack right there. Finally, always be willing to walk away. Whether that's a current person in your firm or trying to hire someone and you just can't find the right fit for your firm, do not hire an underwhelming fit. Don't feel like you're having to clench and grit your teeth when you hire someone. That feeling is instinct kicking in and telling you don't do this. Listen to that instinct and be willing to walk away and reset the process. All right, the last thing I want to talk with you about is paying the right amount for your team members. So first off, make no assumptions about pay. You don't know what they want. You're going to need to ask questions. One problem I see all the time is, are you paying enough for your expectations? I've watched law firms list intake positions where they talk about it basically being a high-level sales position, high-volume phone answering, and then offering $41,000 for the position. Do you really think you're paying enough to get someone and keep that person? Or are you only paying enough for someone to more or less lie their way into your firm in order to get their foot in the door at having worked in a professional office? Yeah, it's probably going to be the latter, and that's going to cost you a ton of money in the long run. Does salary or commission make more sense in the position? Lawyers who are expected to close clients or close out files, is there a way that you can properly incentivize them, even in a very small way? One law firm owner who I know who's a very high-level 8-figure firm owner, he's talked about this at his event before, has commission ranges in the 3% for many of his lawyers who are not actively signing business but are fed files. This incentivizes them to maximize the value of the file, but 3% is a number that he is absolutely fine with giving away to that person. Then we have the pay blocks here. These are sort of mental pay blocks. Lower level positions, $28,000 to $35,000 per year. If we're looking for the next level of talent, we're going to bump up to between 35 to 42. This is just when you're thinking about the level of talent that you want, slotting them into one of these positions. So like someone who's you could pay 70 to, you could pay as high as 95 to them. And you should expect that possibility. On the other hand, if you're setting a salary range at, say, 65, you're really looking for someone who's going to be between the 55 to 70 range. If they're pushing higher than 70, they'd better be in the next level of talent beyond your expectations for what you had planned on hiring. When you're going out to the market and say hiring an associate attorney, if they see a number like $50,000, even if it has commission, they may feel really devalued. So if we can bump them up to say $60,000 as the base with commission on top of that, that puts them another tier up within these pay blocks and fits closer to their actual expectations. Past $120,000, it's a wide open space. When it comes to setting bonuses, boy oh boy do I talk a lot about bonuses with law firm owners. Bonuses must motivate the employee, but they can't cripple you. A lot of times we end up setting crippling incentives that seem really good right now, but when you try and apply the same incentive to every single person, it completely collapses your business model. Don't be afraid to have smaller commissions than you think are appropriate. The way that you measure money is very different from how most of your employees measure money. Most of your employees, if they were to get a $300 to $500 bonus per quarter, that would be pretty big for them. Whereas for you, that might be something you would rather see daily or weekly. And remember that incentives are always going to be gamed, for better or for worse. If you set an incentive, the human nature is to achieve that incentive with minimum work for maximum value. That's why a lot of people, including salespeople, don't actually hit their full quotas, don't hit their highest level possible bonuses, because they tend to have a number that makes them comfortable in their lifestyle. They're going to try and get away with doing as little as possible for as much money as possible. This can be countered by having a stacking set of bonuses that get better as they achieve next levels, and even team incentives that encourage total performance and people valuing high-performing team members and actually wanting to separate the wheat from the chaff and getting rid of the low performers. And then finally, if you're thinking about, how much should I pay someone, don't be afraid to do some research on Glassdoor. You can see averages for your area there. You can see what they're paying at all different types of positions, all different names for that position, and I encourage you to look at different names. And by simply adjusting the name of the position and some basic responsibilities, you could be talking about the difference between an employee that you're going to pay $34,000 to versus $44,000 to, which is 2 tiers on the pay block system here. You'd have a lot more information to go and make some really smart hires for your law firm. The trick here is to actually take action. If you don't do anything with this, if you don't start running a job ad, if you don't at least get organized for your next few hires, and remember that rule of thirds, you should be planning a third of your existing staff ahead of where you are today, then you are just simply going to lose out on the talent acquisition game. Only those who are active in talent acquisition have any hope of succeeding above others. If the only time that you're thinking about hiring is when you suddenly need it, then chances are you are going to be behind on hiring the best people, because you're always hiring, as Tim Summerroth says, you're shopping hungry, you're hiring hungry. That's a terrible position to put yourself in. So my recommendation would be to go ahead and map out the next hires that you want to make, at least the next 2 to 3 hires, at bare minimum, no matter what size firm you are. Start constructing job ads and make those job ads active. Dare the market to send you great people for your firm that would force you to figure out the economic factors there. Because as you hire people, allowing you to ascend up in the business development of your practice, you'll find that they inevitably pay for themselves and make a lot of space for you to make more money, more profit, and actually buy your time back against all the little tasks that you don't want to be doing in your firm. Now, of course, if you're interested in getting coached on all of this, held accountable to it, and for us to work together on developing who you should be hiring for your firm, reach out to talk about one-on-one coaching. At the very least, check out our courses, other materials, YouTube channel, etc. for more resources on how you can grow your law firm with the help of Law Firm Alchemy. Until next time.